Hello, fight fans, and welcome to the Combat Challenge podcast. My guest is a bantamweight athlete with 30 professional fights under his name. He's competed on prestigious promotions such as ACB, Full Contact Contender, Superior Challenge, and Cage Warriors. He's also the head honcho of Team Dynamite Martial Arts Academy and promotes grappling comps under super fights. Mr. Declan Kid Dynamite Williams. Thank you, my brother. Nice to see you, man.
What an entrance. Awesome.
I'm trying to use my MC skills, brother, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, I give you your first MC job as well, didn't I?
You did, brother. You did.
I did.
Oh, man. Was it on Cage Conflict or?
No, on Controlled Aggression.
Controlled Aggression,
Harsh,
you did. Yeah, that was just madness. I remember being in the cage and thinking, wow, like in the blue corner. But you did, man. That was like over maybe like 10 years or so.
About 10 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. You gave me my first MC job, and it was my show that you had your pro debut.
My first pro, yeah, versus Nico Joker.
Joker, and that was in like 2009, 2008?
2009, February 2009.
Unbelievable, innit? How time flies, brother. But Declan, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for asking, man.
We've got history, brother. We got history, man. So I'm really pleased that you're on. The first thing I'm going to ask you, brother, the name Kid Dynamite. Tell us the story behind that and how did that come about?
The name has been with me since I was a kid, funnily enough, because I was a big wrestling fan. So we're into WWF from 4 years old, WWE, obviously when it changed. And I always wanted to be a wrestler. I thought I was going to be a wrestler. I went through my whole life from 4-year-old right until my late teens thinking one day I'm going to be a wrestler. So we did a lot of backyard wrestling with my friends, and obviously I was the champ. We picked our names and stuff, and me being a big fan of British wrestling in general, I was a fan of the Dynamite Kid. So I was Kid Dynamite, Declan Kid Dynamite in it when we wrestled. So when I started MMA, it kind of just fell with it. I think when I started MMA, it was around that time when everyone had names. You had to have a name. You had to have a bit of a gimmick. It was the Cage Rage times where everyone started. I looked about 12, and I had quite heavy hands, so I was knocking people out. So it kind of fit.
It did, brother. It did, and I've witnessed it myself, brother. So yeah, definitely. Declan, you know, you've been involved in martial arts for years, brother. You know, in both as a student, competing, coaching. Can you share with us your martial arts journey from a young age? What sort of sports you got into, and how it's ended up where you are now?
If you went and asked everyone back at my school, like who'd be an athlete, I'd be the last of the list. I didn't play football. I played a little bit of rugby, but not much. And I was so unathletic. But my brothers were, my older brothers, they were quite athletic, good at football. I had 2 left feet. They all took the mick out of me. I couldn't play football. I wasn't into any sport. Just wrestling, and that were it, really. I was 20, and I really wanted to do wrestling. I thought, this is it. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And I found a wrestling school, but a pro wrestling school, and it ran Bolton. And I went with a lad who'd been doing it for a while. And then I did a few sessions, and then they moved. I think they moved to Wigan, and we couldn't get there. So then that kind of ended that. I didn't know where I'd really go from there, or when I'd actually find a wrestling school. And I was in my local gym, and the guy who was working on the front desk just turned around and said, "Oh, he does wrestling over there." And I looked over at this big guy, and I'm thinking, oh, you know. he said, yeah, go ask him. He does some sort of wrestling. I don't know what it is. And what it ended up being, well, I walked up and I said, oh, do you do wrestling? He said, well, I do grappling. I'm like, all right, what's that? And I mean, he was a big rugby player looking guy, big mean guy. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, it's like submission wrestling. It's only in Burnley, which was, 10, 15 minutes drive down the road from me. And he went from this big like thing. He's like, "Oh, come down tonight, like," and friendly as anything. Absolutely, Jason Manning is called, local lad, absolutely a lovely guy. And he said, "Come down tonight." So I got my brothers because I didn't want to go on my own. I were always a bit of a shit bag. I always had my brothers with me, no matter what. So I turned around and I said, "Do you fancy going to this wrestling tonight? You know, this grappling?" So me and my brothers went down and we met. It's mad because we met Rob Sinclair. Mick Sinclair was teaching, but he was actually a student. The guy who actually did teach called Jason Tattersall, and he were on holiday. So Mick was teaching that night. So the first night we get there, Mick's teaching. Jimmy A from Apex was there to, you know, he just started. Rob Friedman has just started. So we all started out together. Now they've all branched off, obviously. They all own their own clubs and stuff like that. So I trained there for quite a while, just doing submission wrestling, probably about a year. And then Mick and Rob Sinclair, they decided to start doing MMA classes at the same gym on a different night. So we were doing 2 nights grappling, and then they decided to do MMA on different nights. So obviously we joined in with that. And the nights I wasn't training there, we hired out, me and my brothers hired out a local leisure hall, like we're a school leisure bit, like gymnasium. And we rent that out a couple of days a week and we just trained there. So it kind of led on from there. But with the teaching from that, so we had to pay we had to cover the cost of the gym. So what we did, we all chipped in. So then we'd invite a friend. And when he came, he'd chip in. So that meant I didn't have to pay. But and then the next time, another one had joined. Now I've made money from it. And that is how it started. It got to the point where 4 of us had to chip in. And then after about 2 months, there were about 3 months or something, there were about 10 of us all trained. Now we're making money from going over to Burnley to learn and bringing what I'd learned back to this gymnasium and teaching the local lads from around my area and stuff like that. So that's how I went from learning myself as well as teaching at the same time. And this was before I'd even had a fight. What I was teaching were, you know, very, very basic stuff from the get-go, like. So I think I've kind of always taught. I've always been into the teaching side of it as well.
Now, those people that you mentioned, Declan, Rob and them, they ended up open. Was it Blackburn Predators or
Blackburn Predators? Rob Friedman owns, Apex, Jimmy owns, and Sinclair MMA, Mick and Rob owns.
Sure, I had Rob on the other day, man. He's a good guy to talk to.
Yeah.
Nice
You
guy.
want Mick on?
Really?
Yeah, he's crazy. Well, absolute lovely guy. One of the best guys you could ever meet. Absolute lovely guy.
I'll get him on. The other thing is, brother, on your martial arts journey that you talked about, have there been any coaches or mentors that have played a significant part? And if so, can you share who they are and what role did they play in your martial arts?
Yeah, so obviously we're just starting out, Jason Tattersall and Jay Manning for the teaching, the grappling. And Mick Sinclair, obviously, he was always someone I looked up to from the get-go because of he were already competing. He were already fighting under Bisping Fight Academy, under Michael Bisping Fight Academy. So he was always someone I looked up to. Then they funnily enough, introduced me to Gab Boardman then over at Manchester Predators. So obviously for the last 10 years, I've been going over to there and training.
Now, your first professional fight was on the Champions back in the days. And did you fight amateur beforehand, or did you go straight
I had
into...
12 amateur fights.
Wow.
So 42 MMA fights altogether I've had. And that I mean, that I've weighed, I'd have more pro fights if one guy pulled out on the day, so we both weighed in, got there on the day to fight, and he didn't turn up. And another one was we weighed in 10 minutes before the fight, that a riot broke out, and they cancelled our fight.
I was speaking to Danny Mitchell because I was there doing the photography. Was that the one
No
with the pool
way.
table off the balcony?
Yeah. Well, I were meant to headline that card. And what were the show? Phoenix fight?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. In Doncaster. Brilliant. Yeah.
Because I was taking photographs with Pete, right? And they've got a balcony, all of a sudden it kicks off. And then people are throwing those big bottles of Magners, and they're big bottles.
Yeah.
So everyone starts running out, running away. And I'm thinking, I'll just keep taking photos. One guy clocks me taking photos. So he's running down with fire extinguisher and trying to get me with fire extinguisher.
No.
Oh, man, it was
Well,
bad. Were you warming up whilst that were happening?
I was warming up. I could hear all this going on. We opened the door and a girl stood there with blood on her face, and we just shut the door and went, nah, we're not having that. Forget that. Pack up, we're going. it was crazy. Crazy.
And when you had your debut pro fight, because when you were on Champions, that was the time when it was in a ring rather than a cage.
It was, yeah. I fought most of my amateurs in a ring. I think I fought twice in a cage. Oh no, 3 times at amateur in a cage. Other than that, everyone were in a ring. And I fought I'd say first 3 pro fights in a ring as well. So my debut, when I fought in Finland, and that was my 3rd pro fight, and that were in a big Olympic size boxing ring, like so.
Different dynamics, isn't there, from fighting in a ring than in a cage?
Oh,
right?
completely. Yeah, completely.
Especially like using the cage wall, because you can't use that with ring, right?
Well, that's it. No, you just went through it, and then got dragged back to the middle. There were some awkward situations that happen when you're in a ring.
I used to watch the Pride ones, when they'd stop and they're about to fall out, and then they drag them, but they're saying to them, "Don't move," so they're like statues.
Yeah, and then after pull it. I've had that done. I've had that done many times. You find it a lot with grappling matches. They do that, don't they? You see that a lot now with grappling matches.
Oh man, listen, I remember. Right? Did you used to have a gym like on a top floor or somewhere? Because I remember bringing a cage wall to your gym.
You did? No, you bought our cage wall.
Oh, sorry, I bought that.
Yeah, you bought our cage wall off us. Yeah.
Where was that? Which gym was that?
That was our Team Warriors gym. It was not far from where I am now, to be honest, in Waterford.
Because I remember I had a bit of role with you guys then as well, brother.
Yeah, we did a open day. You come down, took pictures and stuff like that. But it was a few years later that you bought the wall. I think we opened in 2009, and we shut in 2011, that one, and moved to somewhere else.
We're in these testing times, brother Declan, with the pandemic and everything, and a lot of people are struggling, brother. And are you finding time, and if you are, how are you finding time to keep the fitness going, which will have a knock-on positive effect with the mental side as well?
Well, I mean, I've always used my fitness for my mental medicine, I call it, because I can take a week off and I suffer quite bad. I always have. That's why I've always competed so much, to have focus, to have something to work towards, and just to keep active. If I'm not active, my mind races, and I'm constantly, I start to feel down. I start to be negative all the time. And I can take a week. I mean, even over Christmas, anytime I shut the gym over Christmas, I start to get depressed. I can't wait to get back just to use that exercise as a medicine, you know, to try and feed my brain, to stop me from overthinking, stop being negative. So obviously with the lockdown, I think the first lockdown was worse. After now, I've started to actually, I mean, it's my gym, you know, at the end of the day. I can go and use my own gym. I've got no classes on. I've got finger, which is obviously quite depressing, does have an effect on me, because I love the teaching. I love having the boys, you know, there and and teach and having the laugh and stuff like that, and socializing in general. So now at the moment, obviously I can't do that, but I can use the gym. Now in the first lockdown, I did take probably a couple of months away from it, and that's when I felt it the most, like but now I'm not willing to not go to my own gym and feel depressed, because, you know, I'm not giving anyone COVID. I'm not catching COVID because I'm not seeing anyone. So they can't stop me from using my own gym. I'm sure, you know, as long as I'm only in on my own. Unless they want to pay my bills, that's they want to come around and pay the bills from that.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, brother. I mean, me and a good friend of mine, Steve, which you'll know because I did TMC with him, that tailor-made combat and other bits and bats. And me and him, we try to keep active, and we've started doing quite a bit of walking in the morning and try to build up, because we're looking at doing the 3 peaks. And then for the last couple of days, we've been going to Scammondon, you know, steps. Brother, they're not easy for me, climbing up those steps, man. It's like a stampede.
Oh, climbing up the steps. Right. Yeah.
It kills me, but you've got to do it, because you've got to have that mental side ready.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just itching, aren't you? Something's just not right, and you end up being a bit temperamental, and it's no good, man. There's so many people struggling. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Tell us about how the inception of Team Dynamite came about, and who else helps there. You know, when you're up and running as normal, and who helps at the academy.
So going back, like I said from the start, I've always taught. So I always found, if I went and learned something from somewhere, say I went over to Gabs, or I was training over at Sinclair's earlier on, training grappling here when I go other places, things like that, I was always bringing it back and repeat, you know, more or less repeating what I'd already learned, so that I think it stays in your head. If you go somewhere and you learn something one day, but then you don't do it again for months and months later, or, you know, time later, it's gone out your head. But if you're repeating it again to someone, you're having to remember, you're having to, you know, like go through the steps and stuff. And I found that, you know, like teaching has always been, you know, been perfect for me to learn that one move. I'm not the brightest spark, and it does take a few times for me to learn something. So for me to learn it one day and then have to repeat it a few days later, it means that I'm remembering, and you know. So I've always taught right from the get-go, you know. So I always wanted a team. I always wanted to coach and to pass on knowledge and stuff like that. We've had a couple of different names with different coaches, you know, part of the teams and stuff over the years. But then when I settled at a new gym, I got a new premises. I'd left one place, I was going to another one. I thought, it's a fresh start, you know, and I want a fresh name that means something to me. So Dynamite, as in Kid Dynamite. So Team Dynamite is my team then. So then it felt more about my team then. So that's how the name came about, and we're just building the team now from ground up with amateurs, and hopefully one day some pros and some champions.
There's a lot of different classes that you're wanting to put together, aren't you, from like a really young age, right?
Yeah, we teach from 3-year-old. So we have, yeah, that's the fun. Yeah. So we do a class from 3 to 7-year-olds, then a class, and then classes from 5 to 12, and then we do a team. Then we've just started a team class, and then we do adults. But from adults, you can start from 13-year-old. So it's mainly I started the kids because of my son. I mean, I've got a 15-year-old son, but I started the kids class so that he could do. So as it's gone on, the more classes I've done. So as he's got older, I've gone, right, well, I'll do this class now just to keep my son active. And
No, it's
I mean, if I'm teaching, he's around, I know what he's doing. I can keep an eye on him.
Well, I was speaking to Paul Sutherland from Trojan Free Fighters, and he was saying similar about his son, you know, that he's getting him involved from a young age, you know, because he wants to kind of make sure that he shapes and molds him right. You know, kids want to do their own stuff, you know, but at the same time, you want to try to influence them as much as possible, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, growing up, the kids who played sports, the kids who were involved in, they're the ones who weren't in trouble. The kids who didn't play sports and just sat, you know, like bummed around, they're the ones who ended up in trouble and started martial arts late, like me. So.
Well, I was going to say, brother, that sounds a bit like you.
Well, yeah, it's very much me, and that's it. That's how I look at it. And I think if I can get him into martial arts, I can, and keep him active. At least it keeps him out of trouble. It keeps him. He has something to focus on. Now, in my head, I don't want him to compete. I don't want him to be a fighter. That's not what he's doing it for. You know, like if he follows in my footsteps of teaching, I'd be buzzing because obviously he's followed my footsteps. But I'd rather him go on and do something a little bit better. Be, you know, like be a doctor or a policeman or something. You know, a proper profession that's a bit more stable than.
Well, it's interesting you're saying that, Declan. You know, there was a footage I'd watched a while back on YouTube, and this guy was talking about, you know, jiu-jitsu and being a black belt. And somebody said, look, in 10 years' time, you'll either be a doctor, you could be a laborer, you could be a police officer, a firefighter, but you could still be them and be a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, yeah, of course, yeah.
And still have that skill, right? Which will help you just in life, right?
Well, to be honest, I think all police should do jiu-jitsu anyway. I mean, I work with a few who come and do privates with me and stuff like that. And I speak to them about what they do for their self-defense and the stuff they tell. But they laugh. They laugh while I'm at, you know, like while I'm talking to them about it, because they just say how it's so just not even dated. It's just so, you know, like out of touch of what's reality. And and now they're doing where you've got to have a degree to be in the police. So there's people going in with no life experience other than just having a degree, and they're being thrown into these crack dens with no, you know, being attacked or, you know, like into fights, and they've never experienced a fight, never experienced any, you know, like physical altercation whatsoever. And then they get into their early 20s, they've got this degree behind them, and now they're just being thrown straight into this situation. And the only training they've got is the defense lab stuff, which is bizarre.
Well, I can talk from experience because I was in the police for many years, and it was only for the last couple of years they incorporated a bit of groundwork. And the groundwork was one person's on the back, the other person mounts them, and you end up kind of nipping them where the hips are to get them off, you know? And it is the most, and you know, the instructor knew who I was, and he was asking for my input, but they've got certain guidelines that they've got to stay within certain parameters. It is dated, Declan, I've got to tell you, brother. And jiu-jitsu or any sort of grappling, you know, with or without a gi, it's unbelievable how much, the confidence it gives you, where you don't have to rely on being aggressive, because that's a defense tactic. You know, you don't have to rely on that. You can be a lot more calmer, because ultimately, if it gets to that stage, you know, you'd be able to hold your own for long enough, you know, where you don't have to rely on using a stick or trying to get your handcuffs. And for me, when I joined police, I was 28 when I joined. But the good thing for me was at that time, I'd been working on the doors for 4 years. I was working for the probation service and the youth service, so I could talk to people. Yeah, and I was training in MMA, so I could talk to people, but also I had that life experience, Declan, where you deal with confrontation on the doors, but at the same time you know how to speak to a young one at a youth club, you know how to speak to offenders, you know, in probation service. So that always stood me in good stead. But on top of all that was having the ability, knowing that if it came to it, you could just hold your own. And I think you can naturally give off this aura, and people just know, don't they?
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, you obviously, if you do, it builds confidence by training. You can get the smallest guy or the dweebiest guy who's never fought in their lives before, and they come to training. It's only a few months down, and you see the difference in them. You know, they're only, and that could be just grappling, they could, or just jiu-jitsu. It doesn't have to be the striking part, but the confidence of them knowing, do you know what? You know, if you actually started, I'd grab you, I'd hold you, and I'd know how to hold you and how to keep you down, and eventually how to actually tap you out or choke you unconscious. And you see the confidence, and I love that. That's what I love about the teaching, when they're in awe of watching you show a move, and they're like, wow, how is it? And you can see their confidence building, you know, and it's good to see. And like with my mate who's in the police, he luckily he trains jiu-jitsu, so he can handle himself. But he says there's people in the force that really would struggle and do struggle, you know, like when it comes to it, but yet they don't go out the way to learn, you know, like, and they'll only learn from what they're being taught by the police or what they're telling them to learn.
I think sometimes there's this misconception with certain officers where they feel if they're to say to someone, step back, that they're going to listen to them. They feel that if they use the powder and spray them, it's going to diffuse it. Sometimes that has the adverse effect, Declan, you know, and then you've got to deal with not just a person who's frustrated, they then become an angry monster that you've got to deal with. Now, you're paired up with someone else, and what might happen is the person that you're paired up with now, he or she might not be that, you know, disciplined enough to know jiu-jitsu or other forms of martial arts. So they'll give it all that. And then it just gets it to that level. Then you're trying to deal with someone else, which wasn't even your fault. But because that person doesn't have the confidence and doesn't give off the aura, puts it all on you. And then you're the one that has to deal with it. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. And, you know, I do feel for officers because it is a difficult time. And I say to people, look, police officers is just like anywhere. It's a segment of society. So in the police, you'll get really good officers. You'll get really bad, you know, officers who are just deceitful and they commit fraud and they abuse their power. But you get those that are really kind and just pleasant people who do it because they like helping people. And I think that's why, even though, I was in the police during the time where I was competing, where I was learning, you know, jiu-jitsu and other parts of MMA, I never had an issue with anyone because I was in the police. That was never a point, because that's not my character, you know. No. You know, it was completely
But
different.
It gives you confidence to be like that as well, I believe. You know, like knowing you. It's going back to when the people who tend to fight when you're younger are the ones who don't know how to fight. You know, the ones who know how to fight tend to don't ever have to fight. You know, like they go through life and it's like they might get in a scrap here and there, but once someone says, nah, they know how to fight, it's like, now we'll leave them alone. Or they have that thing about them where it radiates off them the actual, you know, you think, you know, they're confident in themselves because they know how to handle themselves, or, you know, like just if I ever came about, they'd step up to the mark. But then the ones who didn't are the ones who shout and then they were the ones who always end up fighting. And you think, why are you fighting? You don't know how to fight.
Brother, you've had like over 40 MMA fights. Through those fights, is there any fights that were like the most rewarding? It doesn't have to be some that you won. It could be some adversity, some sort of weight cut or anything, or injury that you could share with us.
I think my favorite fight is the one that isn't on my record because where it got turned over to eventually a no contest, which makes no sense either. But I thought I won a title as well, and I thought Jay Chuccanello, something like that. I'm not good with names. Jay Chuccanello, who then went on to fight on Tough Series but to get in the Tough Series, well, you had to have no losses on your record. Well, I'd already beat him, but when he got in there, that disappeared. That had disappeared. So but that's my favourite fight because of the performance I put in. It was the best I'd ever felt going into a fight, and I knew he was 5-0. I mean, I'd had numerous fights. It were 2016 when I fought him, so I'd had years of fights under my belt, like. But I knew I was going to win. I knew going in. I knew, like, mentally and physically, I was the fittest I'd ever been. I put in the best performance. I mean, it was a tough fight, but I believe I won the first 2 rounds and probably lost the third to the ending where he knocked me down with a punch. Other than that, I didn't take any real punishment, right, like that. I won the fight. Everyone said I won the fight. Months went by. I'd won nothing. I took the belt. I got the belt. I took it home. I still got the belt, and then it never went on my record. And I'm thinking, well, that's strange. Why is it not on Sherdog? Why is it not on Tapology? So I got my manager at the time, which was Chris Clark, to contact the promoter, who then told him that they decided that he didn't think it should have been a win. It should have been a draw.
Time was it given as a win?
Yeah. I got the belt. I got the, I were the winner for months. I were the winner. But the guy, so I fought him in his own back garden, his own backyard. So obviously the promoter was expecting him to get this win, and so I could tell the promoter weren't happy anyway, straight after the fight. But it is what it is. I got the win. You kind of accept it. He had to accept it. But a few months down the line, he just decided, you know what? If I say it wasn't a win, it wasn't a win, and it wasn't a win. It's not on any record. It's on as a no contest now.
And I remember when that Tough Series was on, there was someone on social media about him losing that fight to you. But then that record just disappeared. Wow, yeah, I remember.
Well, every time a post or a tweet got put on, on Instagram or on Twitter or anything about me versus him, it'd get taken down as well. Big conspiracy. No, but it is what it is. It were a fight. It's a fight I'm proud of. I've still got I've still got footage of the fight, so it's not like it can be hidden. I've got, so. But it's a shame that it's not on my record, because I'd have 14 wins and not the 13 wins that it says.
You also run Super Fights, which is a grappling comp. Can you tell us about the rule set? And also, is there any sort of memorable grappling fight that you can share with myself and the viewers?
Yeah, so with the rules, we do it. It's a 10-minute fight, 10-minute match. And then if there's no winner at the end of the 10 minutes, we go into an EBI overtime round. So the EBI rules. So the Eddie Bravo Invitational rules. So what they do 3 rounds of it, but we just do 1. So what it is, one starts in either the armbar position or a back control position. It's the quickest to escape that position. And they do 3, like I said, they do 3 rounds of that. We just do the 1. So if a guy chooses the back or spider web is obviously the armbar position, and he taps him, he gets the armbar and he subs him. The other guy gets a chance to sub him just as quick. Whoever gets the fastest sub wins. If the guy stays onto his back, or in the armbar position, but just holds him, he's got to keep him down while the other one escapes. So you've got to either escape or hold them so they can escape, or tap them. If he escapes, you've got to then beat his escape, the fastest escape. And so that's the overtime, that's the EBI. A lot of people don't agree with it, and I understand why, because people who play the 10 minutes, they'll hold on to you just to do the EBI overtime. So we started off just as a little grappling comp because it was just hard to. I think it was more the fact that to get onto grappling comps, you were looking at you're paying, which you're looking at 35 to 40 quid a time, and you might get knocked out in the first round, and it was always a bit like, I've just paid that, and it's, you know what I mean, as you do. So we wanted one where it was just one-on-one super fight, but a full show. So. But we wanted it so that it was like up and coming, so white belts, blue belts, because there were shows were starting out like that, like Grapple Fest. They started around the same time, but they have black belts, brown belts, fucking some big names on the show. Like myself, I've competed on there. So we wanted it so for lower belts, give them the platform to, because by the time you get to that brown belt, black belt, if you've never done it, it's a shock to the system. But if you're used to it from your finger, then you're gonna get better. By the time you get to that level, you'll already have experienced it. So we started, white belts, blue belts, purple belts. That mainly there. But then it just took off. So from there, we wanted it so that my guys could compete really, so that they got competition, and then other gyms were like, "Oh, we want on," and then black belts were contacting us, and people from all over. Really, it's just started off small, and it's just got bigger and bigger. And then, like you said about the most memorable match was we did a team tournament, and we did a tournament first one. We did there were a team match, and it was the Lakes, so Team Lakes BJJ, and I'm trying to think the other team, they're not together anymore. They ended up splitting up, but I cannot for the life of me think off the top of my head. But the match was amazing because you have two guys, but you can have any weight. So you could have a guy at 120 kg go against the guy at 70 kg, but you don't know who's in next. So if the 120 kg guy beats him, he goes out, but then a new man comes in to face him, who could be anywhere. You know what I mean? And there's a weight limit altogether per team, not per person. So you could have a massive guy, and the rest, could weigh, I don't know, 200 kg, and have the rest of them a lot smaller. But what you tend to do is try and even it out. So you have one or two small ones, medium one, and then a big one. So yeah, it's really fun because you see people going against people that, the size difference is just ridiculous, and still coming away with a win. The smaller guy beating the big guy. So it's fun. But if they don't tap each other, they both go out. Then two more come in. If one taps the other, he goes out, and it's the one with the most team left at the end. So it's good. It's really and the one
exciting as well, that brother.
It is. So we decided we were going to do an 8-team tournament for our next show, and COVID killed us.
You've been involved in both as an athlete at a professional level competing, and also you've been coaching for many years. What advice would you give to an athlete who's just starting on their professional career? But then also, what advice would you give someone who's wanting to transition to the coaching side?
For an athlete, I think make sure you find a coach who's in it for you. I think the thing is, there's good trainers out there, some really good, I don't know, we'll say senseis, like good teachers. But that it doesn't always mean they're a good coach. I think a coach is very different to a trainer. Someone can teach you something, but I think a coach has your best interest more than more, you know, everything's about you. They're looking out for you. They want the best for you. They're not going to drop you when you're losing or out like that, or when the next person, you know, the next big thing walks in the gym. They're there for you, and they've got your back. And they're there when you're being lazy. That's the other thing. I mean, you'll get a lot of trainers who will teach you and stuff like that, and you can learn so much from them. But you can get lazy if you've only got yourself to motivate yourself. If you've got a coach who's ringing you up and saying, "Did you go for that run today?" And you're like, "Oh no, I didn't." And then he's like, "Oh, fucking get training, otherwise." So find obviously a coach that you respect, and who's got your best interest. Before you become a coach, make sure your career's over, because it's so hard to do the two and balance the two. There's nothing wrong if you're a fighter to be doing some personal training and stuff just to get money in, because especially in the UK, I mean, we all, we say professional fighters, but in reality, we fight under professional rules. We're not professional fighters. We don't make enough money unless you're fighting in big organisations, and you're not really being paid in the UK at the lower level. So, but make sure you've finished fighting. It's what you want to do is the coaching, and you move on. You can put all your time and effort into coaching, because otherwise it's hard to balance what like training people and then trying to even motivate yourself. But even if not motivate yourself, just put the time in for yourself to be a fighter.
Declan, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us, and I look forward to having you on the next podcast, hopefully another 12 weeks from now, my friend.
Oh, brilliant, man. Thank you.